streets together, put on the brakes, turn around before it is too late. No more than 2 Celsius degrees. We can do this if we all believe. You are a sunshine, sunshine. Be our dancing, let's go away. We hear your morning, the good morning. Tomorrow be a bright day. Fire floods, floods, hurricanes, energy policies that are insane. We must save our earth in time, not protect the corporate bottom line. All that methane and CO2 can't be controlled. It's up to me and you. Raise our voices, we're not alone. This blue sphere is our only home. You are our sunshine, our only sunshine. Be our dancing, let's go away. We hear your morning, morning. Tomorrow be a bright day. A cleaner world within our grasp. Make hydrocarbons a thing of the past. Solar, wind, and hydro too is our future. It's you are.
Welcome, everyone, to the Third Act Faith General Meeting. We still have a few folks coming, but I think we will get started. My name is Martin Wagner. I'm a member of the Coordinating Committee of Third Act Faith, and I wanted to welcome you all here today, let you know that we have a really interesting meeting. We have some speakers who are going to share with us about the season of creation, which happens to be a time when Sunday is happening as well, and to talk a bit about what congregations and other faith communities can do to engage both with the season of creation and with Sunday. So, and then we'll have some time for Q&A and some announcements, and that'll be our meeting. But we're going to start with a grounding exercise that is going to be led by Jane Ellen Nickel.
Thank you, Martin. Welcome to everyone who's with us this evening. We are just a few days past the summer solstice. So I want to hearken back to our December meeting, which took place just before the winter solstice. At that point, we really felt like we were beginning to live in darkness, both the long nights and the short days of winter, but also the feeling that our country was entering a dark time. So we used that meeting to focus on that sense of healing, using the darkness to heal and to prepare for the work of resistance. For that service, one of the readings that we used was a writing by Jan Richardson, Where the Light Begins, and then a beautiful choral piece that's based on that. So now, 6 months later, as we are just past the summer solstice, I want to use 2 more of her poems to help us embrace these long, bright days that we're experiencing right now, as well as the opportunity to let the power of the sun energize us for the work before us, to prepare for Sunday and a promise of a fossil-free future. So I'm going to read one of her short poems, then we'll have about a minute of silence, and I will close with another poem. This is how the light comes. I cannot tell you how the light comes. What I know is that it is more ancient than imagining, that it travels across an astounding expanse to reach us, that it loves searching out what is hidden, what is lost, what is forgotten, or in peril or in pain, that it has a fondness for the body, for finding its way toward flesh, for tracing the edges of form, for shining forth through the eye, the hand, the heart. I cannot tell you how the light comes, but that it does, that it works its way into the deepest dark that enfolds you, though it may seem long ages in coming or arrive in a shape you did not foresee. And so may we this day turn ourselves toward it. May we lift our faces to let it find us. May we bend our bodies to follow the arc it makes. May we open and open more and open still to the blessed light that comes. Blessed are you who bear the light in unbearable times, who testify to its endurance amid the unendurable, who bear witness to its persistence when everything seems in shadow and grief. Blessed are you in whom the light lives, in whom the brightness blazes, your heart a chapel, an altar, where in the deepest night can be seen the fire that shines forth in you, in unaccountable faith, in stubborn hope, in love that illumines every broken thing it finds. May it be so. Amen. I am pleased now to pass it off to Debra Rienstra, another member of our coordinating committee, who will introduce and lead our panel.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Good afternoon, good evening. It's great to be together with you and to share some meaningful silence together, too. We'll hope to have some meaningful talk now. I am honored to welcome two guests. We were going to have three guests, but unfortunately, Avery Davis Lamb is down with COVID. So I'm going to try to fake a little bit and see if I can say a few things that he might have said, but it won't be the same, obviously. But Avery is the executive director of Creation Justice Ministries, and he was really hoping to be with us, but just can't do it. But we also have Hannah Shultz, who is program director for Georgia Interfaith Power and Light, which is a powerhouse Power and Light chapter, I know from experience, having visited their Green Team Summit last year. And then we are also honored to have Rabbi Nina Cardin, who is national chair of the Sustainability Committee of the Masorti Conservative Movement. And Nina also has a brand new book that I hope we'll get a chance to talk about sometime tonight. It's called To Forever Inhabit This Earth, an Ethic of Enoughness. So what we're going to do is think together a little bit about what faith themes we can bring to bear on Sunday observances for September 21. It's just lovely and purposeful how Sunday, which is happening at the autumnal equinox, is also happening at times of the year when religious communities are observing seasons and holidays that have this beautiful resonance with sun and light. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to start by talking a little bit about those themes. So I'm going to begin just saying a few words about the season of creation, which is an ecumenical Christian observation. And then I'm going to ask Hannah and Nina to follow up a little bit. So I'm just going to, I thought about this, just this afternoon when we found out that Avery couldn't make it. So the season of creation was begun in 1989 with the declaration of an Ecumenical World Day of Prayer for Creation by the then Ecumenical Patriarch, so in the Orthodox tradition. And it wasn't too long before the World Council of Churches got involved, and by 2007, Season of Creation had kind of come into being. And it has always been meant to be ecumenical and very much bring what you can. So just like Sunday, it has basic themes And it's meant to invite people into creativity, into observance, into celebration in ways that are appropriate for their community. So I can share with you some websites, and in particular, I would love to share with you, let me see, I gotta find it here, the seasonofcreation.org website. And they have a lovely video about the Season of Creation observance in 2025. And the theme for this year is Peace with Creation. So they have this lovely video you can go watch. It's about 15 minutes long. And they also have a celebration guide that gives ideas and resources. And as we go along tonight, we'll also talk about some other resources and maybe think a little bit about how we can use those themes of Season of Creation in ways that correspond really beautifully with Sunday. So at this point, I'm going to ask Hannah to talk about what she's observing and about ways to use the Season of Creation for interfaith connections and as a sort of foundation for year-round work. So Hannah, welcome, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Hey, thank you. It's so good to be here with you, with all of you. Excited for this conversation. I love the Season of Creation. I think it's so important that there's kind of this marked time in our calendar year, in our liturgical year, in the Christian tradition, where we're dedicated to thinking about creation. I've seen congregations use this time to have a creation-themed worship service, to maybe get outside and do worship out in nature. But I've also seen this season used as a time to kind of launch a more sustaining green team or creation care ministry in congregations. And I think it's so important that we not just let this be a season where we talk about creation for a month and then it's kind of back to business as usual. So what we really try to do at Georgia Interfaith Power and Light is use this as a time to start conversations within congregations about why it matters in their faith tradition, why the environment matters, to use as a time to do like those, worship services that are themed around creation, to do nature hikes or walks together, to do book studies on this topic, and then to help congregations start green teams. We say that green teams are groups of 3 or more individuals and congregations that are really dedicated to sustainability. And these are like the grassroots organizers in the congregation that are leading the sustainability efforts. So we say use this season to figure out who's passionate about this in your congregation, start a green team, and then the green team ideally will kind of lead this ministry throughout the year so that it's not just happening during the Season of Creation, but that so you're thinking long term about what it might look like to fully embrace creation care.
Mm-hmm. Hannah, would you talk a little bit about how green teams work across faith communities? What have you observed about that?
Yeah, we have about 140 green teams in Georgia across the state, and that spans a whole bunch of different faith communities, Christian and Muslim and Jewish and Hindu. And we do a lot of collaboration between green teams as well. So not only are the green teams kind of leading their local congregational efforts, but we have monthly green team roundtables. So green teams from across the state come together on Zoom to do joint programming and work together. We do a number of interfaith activities and dialogues kind of throughout the year with green teams. We do joint river cleanups every year, also in September, actually. It's also World River Day is September 28th. And so that kind of falls nicely within the Season of Creation. And we do a big interfaith river cleanup together. And I've some more ideas about kind of how congregations can engage with each other in some interfaith efforts during Sunday that I'll talk about a little bit later tonight, I think. But really kind of encouraging congregations to be collaborative, knowing that congregations are kind of the best teachers and examples for other congregations. So how can we help green teams kind of showcase what they're doing to other green teams? And they're the experts on like how this works. And so as much as we can get green teams like talking together and talking across faith traditions, I think that also like fits in really nicely with this theme of like building peace and peace in creation. It's peace with each other, peace in community, peace with creation.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think I actually said when the season of creation is, so maybe I should clarify. It begins on September 1 with that original World Day of Prayer, and then it ends on October 4, which is the Feast of St. Francis. And whatever tradition you're in the sort of Christian ecumenical world, you might have some resources or organizations that are already doing season of creation work, and we can talk about that in a little bit too. But let's move now to Rabbi Nina. What are you thinking about themes in the Jewish calendar, in Jewish theology, that can resonate really well with Sunday and with this season?
Well, first, thank you for having me here. It's great to be here with all of you and to see all of you. And I just have to give a shout out to our local Interfaith Power and Light in the Virginia, Washington, Maryland area. And Hannah, do you know how many states have IPLs so that we can make sure that people on the call can go and get connected to their own?
Yeah, about 40 states. So almost every state has a chapter of IPL, and um, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to connect you to your state affiliate.
That would be great. So I don't know if there would be a better time in the Jewish liturgical year, in the Jewish calendar, to have Sunday, September 21st, because our Rosh Hashanah, our New Year, the celebration of the Jewish New Year is September 22nd, the night of September 22nd. So Sunday is the day before we celebrate our new year. And our new year has two elements that I think are just so aligned with the Sunday mission. One, it is in the midst of, but it also sort of begins a very intensive period of introspection, of self-assessment, of understanding where we might have not lived up to all the ideals that we have. So usually we treat that on a very personal basis. Whom might we have harmed intentionally or unintentionally? How we can do better. But I think in this case, what Sunday, September 21st, allows us to do is to take that sense of introspection and self-assessment and understanding how we can do better and what we might have harmed to a new level and say, what have we done, both individually but as a Jewish community, that has not advanced environmental health as we know that it should, that has contributed to waste, that has contributed to harm, and how do we personally imagine that we can make a difference in our own lives, in our own practices and behaviors, and also how can we work structurally with our institutions, our synagogues, our Jewish schools, Jewish agencies. How can we work with them to get them to do better, to advance, to up their game in how they work on sustainability issues? So having that moment, that yearly moment around that self-assessment of how we're doing in relationship to the earth, not just in relationship to each other, is great, and it's perfect. So this is a great opportunity for us to align our liturgical new year with Sunday. But in addition, in our liturgy for Rosh Hashanah, for the new year, there's a refrain which says Hayom Harat Ha'olam. That is, this is the birthday of the world, in a sense. So we celebrate Rosh Hashanah, the new year, as if it's the birthday of the world. And if we celebrate the birthday, what do we like to do at birthdays? We like to give it gifts, and we like to see how beautiful it is, and we like to celebrate it and share its beauty with others. So which we don't always do well enough. So understanding that we celebrate the newness, the birth of creation, right? And that there's a purity and there is an innocence and a health at the beginning of creation that we need to help return to as much as we can, right? So to celebrate the freshness and the newness that comes with birthdays and with birth. So that's another element. But there's one more, which is actually Hayom Harat Olam doesn't really mean birthday. It's about the middle word there is really about pregnancy. And so I like to think of it now in light of what you all are helping me think about in my own tradition, that on Rosh Hashanah, on this new year, the day after our Sunday that we're celebrating together, the world is pregnant with opportunity and pregnant with the ability to make the changes that we seek to make. And as someone else was saying, there was Jane Ellen earlier, we're in such a dark time now that for us to continually think that, yes, there is opportunity, there is brightness, right, there is sunshine, and that there's this pregnancy of opportunity that we say right there in the liturgy of Rosh Hashanah can be uplifting when we sometimes fear we might slide into despair. So I just think that the confluence of Sunday and Rosh Hashanah is just brilliant.
Wonderful. Thank you. Really appreciate that. And I think in the Christian tradition, the sense of what's emerging, the groaning of creation, as St. Paul says, as if the world is in labor. And I've been thinking about that image a lot, the sort of the focus that labor requires, so that the laboring mother is so completely focused on her visceral experience. She needs people helping. She needs people around her being attentive and midwifing this process. And one of the ways we can think about ourselves as people of faith, I think, is we are helping to midwife what is emerging. And we have these resources in our traditions that teach us about resurrection, that teach us about new possibilities, that teach us about walking through times of darkness. And I think our task now is to really creatively find those resources and bring them to bear. I wonder if you two want to respond to each other a little bit. And while you're thinking about that, I want to invite everybody else on the call to be thinking about questions for the Q&A section. We've got some things to talk about yet, but if you have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat, and we'll take a look at those in a little while. Meanwhile, Hannah and Nina, do you want to respond to each other a minute? Then I'm going to invite our cameo special guest in.
Well, I just want to say the interfaith part of what Hannah was talking about is so important. First, we sometimes tend to live too much in silos anyway, and so it's wonderful to find common ground where we can just be with each other and appreciate each other. But even more, just what you're saying, Deborah, we can learn so much from each other, both to help us sharpen our own understanding of our tradition, but then also to appreciate others' traditions that also enriches us. So Hannah, I don't know if you want to talk more about some of the gifts that you've seen through the interfaith work that you've done, but it's really invaluable to all of us.
Yeah. I was just thinking as you were talking, one of my favorite theologians is Barbara Brown Taylor, and she has a book called Holy Envy, and she talks about like having this like holy envy for other faith traditions, like falling in love with other faith traditions and aspects of it. And like I feel this holy envy in everything that you were talking about, having like words and language and holidays in the Jewish tradition that like really uplifts and celebrates the earth and caring for creation. I feel like there are pieces of that in the Christian tradition, but it is so much more explicit, I've seen, in like the Jewish tradition and working with Jewish communities in Georgia. So I talk a lot about my holy envy for that. And like in February, you all have the birthday of the trees, and we like do tree plantings every year. And like, what a fun thing to have like Tu B'Shvat and like celebrate the trees. And yeah, I think that's beautiful. One of the interfaith things that I mentioned was World River Day, which we do in September. It started out as a collaboration between an Episcopal congregation and then a Muslim community, the Ismaili group in Atlanta. And then it's grown in the last couple of years to be more interfaith, and we brought in more explicitly this year Adama Atlanta, which is a Jewish climate group in Georgia. And so we are celebrating World River Day, the Ismaili Global day of service. So it's the day that all across the globe Ismaili followers are doing service projects. And then we're also celebrating reverse tashlik in the Jewish tradition. And, you might be able to explain what that is better than me, but it's like the stars aligned this year and all 3 of those days fell on the exact same day. And so we're going to do like some interfaith education talking about pulling trash out of the river and what reverse tashlik means for the Jewish community. And we're going to talk about the Ismaili values of service. And we're going to talk about like caring for creation in the season of creation in the Christian tradition. And I'm just like so excited we'll have 9 river cleanup locations around Metro Atlanta, over 200 participants. And I think that's like one of the best interfaith things that we do, because it combines both like impact, something practical that we're doing together, and then education and just a chance to be in community together and for some of that organic conversation to happen. And it's a really youth-focused event. So like hopefully youth from different traditions will be together, like playing in the river, pulling trash out, like having a great day together, and also learning something new about like a new faith community.
Yeah, what a great idea. I want to acknowledge one of the people on the call, Dana. Thank you for your comment about including Indigenous and Buddhist views. And exactly what you're saying, Hannah, this is such a great opportunity to reach out to people in your community who are part of different traditions, or who maybe aren't part of any organized tradition, but just are longing for some kind of spiritual connection to Earth and for opportunities to do service projects like that. Everybody can have a good time together when you're cleaning out a river and maybe eating together. So there's just such great opportunities to build interfaith connections through this process. Okay, now we're going to talk more about practicalities, and we're going to start with a very special guest who I roped into this at the very last minute when we heard that Avery would be here. I want to introduce my husband, Reverend Dr. Ron Rienstra, who is a professor of preaching and worship arts at Western Theological Seminary here in Michigan, and also newly appointed director of Church Restoration Program. I hope I'm getting this right, Ron. At
Partnerships. Church partnerships.
Yes, Arasha USA. So he's getting into this pretty seriously too, this business of helping churches, walking with churches, as they begin their creation work, their creation care work, as they undergo a kind of reorientation. And it's interesting that Sunday, as well as the season of creation, are both about reorientation. And I think we could say the same for what you were describing, Nina, that this time of year in the Jewish calendar, and this is common across faiths, right? This time of reorientation. So I've asked Ron to actually talk a little bit about how our church, our home congregation, started celebrating the season of creation 4 or 5 years ago. And we decided we wanted to do something quite big in worship. So Ron, would you describe that process? And welcome. Hi.
Hi. So our church celebrates the liturgical seasons by having a fixed liturgy throughout a given season. And then when we move into the next season, everything changes again. The opening words change, the words that we use for confession, there are a handful of set songs. And so what we wanted to do was to have a liturgy that would center on themes that resonate in the season of creation, but something that would have enough sticking power that we could use it for 5 weeks. I think the season is 5 weeks long or 4 weeks long, but we usually stretch it. We put an extra week on the beginning and an extra week on the end because we actually love the liturgy so much. So there were a handful of us that were deputized to construct the liturgy. And by construct, I say some of us wrote some things and some of us just cut and pasted from wonderful sources of stuff that's already out there. Let me just talk maybe about just 2 or 3 small things within the liturgy itself, just to get an idea of the sorts of things that we do. So, for example, the liturgy is not just the words that we speak and the songs that we sing, for example. It's the whole. So, for example, in our congregation, there's a spot in the front of the sanctuary where we'll often have seasonal artwork. And so in the season of creation, because we have a rather lengthy liturgy, it's often about 16 pages long, and we produce a lot of paper and then we recycle it. And so what we did was we folded a whole bunch of liturgies into birds. And so there is and we have them hanging and perched on a branch. And so it's a large mobile, effectively, a murmuration of birds. And then our opening words say, "We have been appointed by God to join our voices with the constant praise of every creature under heaven." So we're immediately sort of decentering human beings. We're trying to push that anthropocentric impulse away and trying to center, in fact, creation and ourselves as a part of it, as a part of a community of creation, rather than the center of everything. We don't, for example, use the word steward or stewardship or rule in the liturgy anywhere at all. We're trying to, again, steer clear of those theological language that has gotten us in so much trouble. The largely extractive theology that is born from that sort of misunderstanding of our role in creation. We begin singing St. Francis's great hymn, "All Creatures of Our God and King," right? So based on this prayer of St. Francis. And the first time we did it, we actually had to have a little liturgical lesson printed on the back of the liturgy for people who were afraid that singing to Brother Sun and Sister Moon was going to somehow be pantheistic. And so we had to sort of explain then when we were singing Alleluia, we were singing it to the Creator and inviting and joining all of these other creatures. And then we definitely wanted to have a moment of lament, and not just confession, but genuine lament. And so I found this lovely poem by Chris Pohill from the Iona community. And we invited a friend to compose a song for it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful song. It's called "Broken and Wasted." And the song says, it prays that God will bless the tear we shed for the gifts of life that we've squandered, gifts of earth we've squandered. Bless the sigh we breathe. Bless the hands we wring, and so on. It's lovely, and then it's interspersed with a congregational Kyrie. And then that's wrapped up then with the confessional piece that admits our complicity in all of that and says, "We repent of the evil that enslaves us, the evil we have done, and the evil done on our behalf." So it links our lament with our confession of complicity. I could go on about other different pieces of it, but one other thing I neglected to mention, which was one of my favorite things, is in All Creatures of Our God and King, we have a liturgical dance. So we have a dance team that's made up of little moppets from 4 to 14 years old, and they wave swaths of fabric. So it's blue fabric when we're talking about cool rushing waters, and when we talk about the earth ever fertile day by day, pouring forth its blessings on its way, we have green and pink and so forth. It's a very simple choreography, but it's quite lovely. And then the whole congregation sort of joins in a hand gesture for the Alleluia section. So again, the liturgy, which has words and music and visual pieces.
Yeah, thank you. It is hilarious to watch the little girls flop the fabric, because some of them get very enthusiastic about it. And it's such a joyful, even though it has these elements of lament and repentance in it, overall, it is such a life-giving, joyful liturgy, and the congregation has really liked it. So as you say, Ron, we sort of stretch the season because we like it so much. And, you know, one of the questions that I'm sure you've faced too, Hannah, is, okay, so your congregation has a green team. How does that actually influence the rest of the congregation, or does it become this little group doing their thing off to the side? And doing something in worship goes a long way to helping people just trigger their awareness that this is something that this congregation values. So we have found that that's been the case in our church too, that doing something in worship, and this was quite ambitious, you know, this was artists and dancers and musicians and composers, and a whole team did the liturgy. And we will send a link to that liturgy too, if people are curious and want to look at it. But the result is that a lot of people got involved in reorienting all that we do toward caring for creation. And I wouldn't say we've achieved it yet, but it's gone a long way. So there's certainly a heightened awareness and a sense that that's something we value. I can start to see it kind of seeping into other things that we do at church. Okay, Hannah, I would love to hear what you would suggest as practical ways to get faith groups involved in Sunday in particular. What are you observing? How are people combining these faith themes and faith practices with Sunday?
Yeah. I have two kind of ideas. One is more on the impact side, and then one is on the education side. One of the big conversations that's been happening in the Interfaith Power and Light Network lately is around kind of how do you get solar on a congregation? How do you get proposals from installers? How do you finance systems? This could be a whole other conversation, but there's federal money through the Inflation Reduction Act, tax credits that have been available for congregations through a mechanism called direct pay, where congregations, even though they're not tax-paying entities, can take advantage of the tax credit and essentially will get a rebate from the government for 30% of the cost of the solar system. So we've been doing a lot of education with faith communities about that. There's a whole bunch of questions right now about the future of that money and the tax credit. And so I think that is one thing that we're thinking about for Sunday this year, is like using this time to do education in congregations about kind of wherever we're at with the tax credit, like what's available, kind of creating a little bit of a sense of urgency. Like, this is the time, now is the time. What we're hearing from the Senate, from their version of the reconciliation bill, is that they're phasing out the tax credit by the end of 2027. So if their version of the bill is what passes, then there is definitely the sense of urgency of like, you need this to get the installation completed now. So I think really using Sunday as a time to do education and kind of light a fire under some people of like, go ahead, put solar on your buildings. Like, it is important for reducing carbon emissions. It's important for modeling what's possible to your community. It's a hedge against rising utility rates. And like, the time is kind of running out if you want to use federal money to do this. So I think that's kind of on the education piece of like, yeah, inviting speakers to come in from your local Interfaith Power and Light, or from other kind of nonprofit groups that are working on this, or solar installers in your area coming, inviting them to come to your congregation to talk about what's happening and the benefits of solar. So that's one idea. And then the other idea, kind of more on like the impact interfaith community building side, is to organize a solar tour. This, I think, is like what I would love to do with congregations in Georgia. We have a lot of congregations within a couple of miles of each other who have gotten solar this year. So if you're in an area where you have solar and a faith community down the street also has solar, like, it would be so cool to do a little tour and to not only be able to see the solar installations on various places and get to talk about how that process worked in each congregation and really get into some of the weeds on like, what size is the system? How much has this actually saved you? I think when congregations are able to like share their testimony and story about this, it's really impactful to say like, this is what we did, this is how much it costs, this is how much it's saving us, to like show it's not just too good to be true, but like it really does work. But then also to use that time to like worship with other faith communities. So maybe you go to like a Shabbat service and that weekend and you like see the solar on a synagogue, and then you go worship at a church service on a Sunday and you see the solar on that church. And like that could be a way to like do some interfaith collaboration and go to different worship spaces and like use it as a time for some community building as well. So those are two of the things that we're thinking about.
Nice, thank you. Nina, what are you observing in the Jewish communities that you know?
I think the Jewish community is now just waking up to Sunday itself, but there in Baltimore in particular, we've been doing several things. Some of our congregations have put solar panels on their roofs. The Jewish Federation, which is a centralized Jewish philanthropic organization here in Maryland, has a whole solar array that it uses to help power some of our communal buildings. The Catholic Church here has a solar array that it's using to power some of its central buildings as well. As my informant tells me, that I think every Catholic school here has solar panels. So one of the things we're also trying to do is kind of see if we can get some sort of, if not a walking tour, because we're all spread out, but somehow demonstrate that this is something that is within reach. It's like it's not beyond your capacity to do this. It really does work, and it really does, save money and save the earth. So there's that's going on. So two other things I want to share. One, and I'll be very interested to see what Ace has to say about this as well. For the Jewish community, what I'm hoping to promote is the following. There is a little known tradition for the Rosh Hashanah dinner, that is the dinner that you have, to celebrate the new year, where you put a Seder plate, a plate of symbolic food on the table. And those foods represent your hopes and dreams for the coming year. On Passover, we have a Seder plate, which with symbolic food that represents the Exodus. Well, on Rosh Hashanah, there's a Seder plate that European Jews used to create, on which they would put foods that would help them symbolize their dreams for the coming year. I would love for us to be able to design what is called challah, our bread, our ritual bread for the holidays around the new year is round anyway. So we could take this round bread, which is celebrating the holiday, and make it into some sort of a sun design. Many people make their own breads, and so I'm thinking of having a webinar with someone who is very creative at braiding bread and making bread. So in the center of this Seder plate will be a symbol of the sun, and then around the sun will be symbolic foods that remind us about the energy, the power, the gifts of the sun, and then represent also the promises that we want to tell ourselves that we're going to be keeping in order to protect the earth and to use renewable energy and to get off of fossil fuels. So we'll have a whole symbolic plate on our Rosh Hashanah table for that. And I think that could just be, I think a lot of Jewish families will actually enjoy that. So that's number one. But on a more practical basis, one of the things that the Jewish community in my segment of the community is trying to do is to create a person. We don't have a good name for it, but we're calling it right now Chief Sustainability Officer. That is a person in each Jewish institution who holds the portfolio to make sure that that institution pursues sustainability to the best of its ability. Because I think, Deborah, you were saying this when you're asking about green teams. Sometimes green teams feel marginal to the institution. Sometimes, no matter how wonderful the leadership in the team is, people leave interest flags. They think, so the energy falls away. But if we could put in our leadership positions, whether it's a lay leader or whether it's a professional, a portfolio that says this person is responsible for managing the sustainability initiatives of that institution. So there's always somebody who has that institutional concern about sustainability. That will make it more literally sustainable, more enduring, and advance things better. So we're working to make sure that there's a chief sustainability officer in every Jewish institution as much as we can.
That's really important. And that goes to that question of how do we make this more than just one day, one little moment? Ron, do you want to talk about Churches of Restoration as an example of cohort programs that are available out there for, in this case, churches who want to make this more of a commitment, want to make this ongoing, want to figure out ways that this can reorient everything that they do?
Sure. There's a lot of overlap, I think, with the sort of things that Hannah was talking about with ILP. The Churches of Restoration program is we're at the start of this program. We received a grant from the Lilly Foundation in order to Arosha has done a lot of conservation work, and now we're trying to expand and do more work with congregations. As Deb said, congregations in particular that are already persuaded that they need to bring creation care closer to the center of their discipleship and their spiritual formation, but they're not sure how to do it. They're not sure which pathway to take. Is it a pocket forest? Is it a VBS centered on pollinators? Is it an adult book study? Is it solar panels? Is it geothermal? Is it so? Part of what we do with the Churches of Restoration is we have a couple of, let's say we have 4 or 5 geographic areas where we'll have a cluster, a cohort of churches, and in each congregation we ask to have at least 3 representatives, someone from leadership, which goes to the point that Nina was talking about having someone who is the point person, the person who has the blessing of the church leadership. So it's someone on leadership, and then also, and this is a little difficult for some churches, someone who is under 35, because there are a lot of churches where the folks are our ages and older. And so we recognize both that this is a concern for young people, and because we want to say that these projects that congregations take up for a year, it's the first step in a long process. So we want them to see a 30-year horizon for the sorts of things that they're going to be doing in their churches to continue to increase. So each congregation sends 3 or 4 or 5 people, and we have cohort meetings each month, and one is online and gathers a number of cohorts together, and then once a month it's in person, and we'll often get our hands dirty doing something. We're going to Plainsong Farm, or we're cleaning up a river, or we're doing those sorts of things. So it's a lot like what Hannah was describing. Most of the cohorts are ecumenical, though they are not yet interfaith. That may be in time.
Yeah, thank you. And this is one example of a lot of cohort programs that congregations of various kinds could look into. The resources are out there. It's just hard for people to find them sometimes. So this is a moment where planning your Sunday events, those of us who are older tend to have networks, we know people. I know Steve Mulder is on this call. Hi, Steve. I hope that you will talk about Solar Faithful in a minute. But those of us who are older, we have networks and we know people, and here's a great chance for us to use those networks to create these partnerships that can not only make for a wonderful Sunday where we learn from each other, but also help create these sort of networks of connection that can be mutually supportive going forward. It's time for questions. So let's hear from folks. What are you planning? What ideas do you have? And what questions do you have? So I'll look at the chat, and maybe we can switch to whatever view is appropriate, the one with all the people at once, so we can see who has questions. You can raise your hand, or you can just speak up.
If I could just say one other thing, by the way.
Please. Yes, please.
We are also hoping to have organizations that are local. We are here in Baltimore, not just in my faith community, but in general for Sunday, We're hoping to have organizations that are advocacy organizations for the environment be present at as a central event that we're planning, because we want to use Sunday in this joyous way to get people to celebrate, right, the power of the sun and renewable energies. But after that, as you keep saying, it's got to have something you follow up, and we want to make sure that we can sign up as many people to work with our local advocacy organizations, so that afterwards they will be able to work with our General Assembly here in the state, work on the federal level, because we have to change policy and we have to be able to effect policy. So there are some Jewish advocacy organizations like Dayenu, just DAYENU.org, Jewish Earth Alliance. There is Adama. So I can give you these links as well. But even beyond the faith-based advocacy organizations, we're just hoping to get elected officials to come, and these advocacy environmental organizations, because we want to build the energy. We want to build up the numbers so that we can really be effective in our advocacy this coming year.
Yeah, thank you. Desperately needed. Yeah, here's our chance to get out of our silos, right? Get out of our lanes and work together for shared things that are absolutely crucial. Steve Mulder, do you want to talk about Solar Faithful? Hi, Steve. Thanks for being here.
Hey, hi, Deb, and all. What did you want me to? What did you want me to share?
Describe what Solar Faithful is as a
Okay.
way of demonstrating there are resources for churches who think, should we do solar, but don't know what to do.
Okay. So Solar Faithful is a nonprofit that we started about 3 years ago, and it was actually a faith-based climate group that I was a part of, as well as Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, and a couple other organizations that got together and started talking about this. How can we get more congregations actually doing solar? Because in the state of Michigan, there's about 10,000 houses of worship, and about 0.5% of them have solar. At least when we started. We think at the end of this year, we'll be about 1%. So we think we'll have about double the number of churches that have solar in Michigan. So we are based in Michigan, and we're trying to start in Michigan, help congregations of all faiths, and also faith-based nonprofits to do solar. And so it's been a very interesting journey. We thought we started out as a very much a grassroots thing. We started now working at the denominational level, but we're also now working with grantors. And that's been interesting because we had a bunch of grants lined up that are now being clawed back by the federal government. So it's just been a roller coaster, but it's been wonderful to work with all these different people of faith who are trying to address this climate crisis in the best way they can.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So you help people
Sure.
with residential as well as houses of worship.
We focus on houses of worship and faith-based nonprofits, but we do also connect people who are interested in doing solar for their residents as well.
Great, thank you. What other questions do people have? What ideas do you have for having your faith community connect with Sunday this year?
Deborah, so I've been looking in the chat. You can hear me, yeah? I did unmute. Okay, good for me. And there was an interesting discussion about the Bioneers Conference. Robert, wherever you are, introduced the idea about rights of nature and gave an example of polluted lake. Catherine was talking about the Bioneers Conference. So I wonder if either of those two, Robert or Catherine, not to put you on the spot, but just to let you share with us a little of your either thinking or the resource that Catherine was referring to.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I attended the Bioneers Conference in Berkeley for the first time in March and was really blown away by just the general tone and the depth of presentations and the ability to make all these connections that we're craving to make. So I did put a link in the chat also to the keynote by the man who is very much in the forefront of dealing with getting these legal rights of nature recognized. And it was so mind-blowing. I recommend it. Can't recommend it highly enough.
Mm.
Yeah, I see that now, Catherine. If everyone goes to the chat, you can see her link to that particular speaker, I think Cesar Rodriguez. So
Mhm.
thank you, Catherine.
And I would like to say thank you to Catherine as well. I'm the Robert that brought it up, but I don't know much about it. And it just seems to me an eminently reasonable thing to do. This is a society that has said that a corporation is a person. And to me, the absurdity of that, it's impossible for me to grasp. And much more reasonable and understandable is the thought that the lakes and the bayous and the rivers and the Gulf of Mexico, and I do say the Gulf of Mexico, are entities that deserve the reverence that Francis of Assisi gave them, and that they do have rights. If we can say corporations do, then we can say that natural entities do. And I would like to look into that much more. Thank you for providing that to me.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, there's stories about this quite a bit, and there are countries that have enshrined the rights of nature in their constitutions. I think Ecuador is one of them. It's a hard sell in the United States of America because we are so keen on individual property rights, and corporate money is an extension of that. So yeah, it's an uphill climb. I know Lake Erie briefly had rights. Toledo voted to give Lake Erie rights. It's kind of a last ditch legal tool for forcing protections, and it doesn't always work. It's hard in the US, but the movement across the globe is growing for some kind of recognition that not only nature has the right to exist in health, but so do we. So that those legal tools are getting more and more refined, as are polluter pay laws. So thank you for bringing that up.
If I can just add, can I
yeah,
just add one thing on that?
please.
I worked on these issues for 30 plus years as a
good.
human rights and environmental lawyer, and everything Deborah and others have said is correct. I will add, there was a comment in the chat about moving from our reverence for the world or recognizing its sacredness to actually concrete action. And I do think there are things that we can do along these lines. As I put in the chat, Pittsburgh was the first city to recognize the rights of nature. And I mean, I think it would be a really interesting action for congregations to begin a campaign to get your own cities to take those kinds of actions and recognize the rights of nature.
Thank you.
I feel like a topic for a meeting in the future, Deborah, is coming up. Can I draw your attention? One of my tasks was to look in the chat. That's why I keep jumping in.
Thank you.
So Betty Southwick wants to tell us about something in Boston, followed by Carol is going to tell us something that sounds really interesting in 3 different locations. So let's start with Betty.
Hello, happy to be here. We have a group of faith communities, that's up to 10 now, that we started last fall around climate and around democracy. And Sunday came along and we said, let's do it. Let's do something together. So we're planning a procession down the Newbury Street, picking up people of churches along the way, ending in the Boston Common for a multi-faith service. And we feel like telling the world that faith communities care about this stuff, that we're willing to stand up and march on the streets and let them know that we care deeply about climate, democracy. And we're trying to we don't have our solar piece fit in yet, and we're still working on that. But Bill McKibben was here at Old North Church on April 26th to kick off Sunday. And so we have the Old North Rector, we have Green Faith advising us because they were involved in that. So we feel like we've got a great coalition to make something happen that will be really impactful.
That's awesome. Betty, will you tell us, how did you organize this? Who took the lead? How did it happen so that we can imitate you?
Church of the Covenant, which is where I'm a member, has a Climate Jubilee team that has been active for 5 or 6 years. We started before the pandemic. And that group decided that we can't do this alone. We can do something bigger. And so we invited people for lunch last November, which happened to be the Sunday after the election. 38 people came, 9 different faith communities were there. So the group began to formalize a year ago, well, 9 months ago. And so they were ready. I mean, I sort of feel like Sunday became an active action that we could do together that actually helps us, the group form, the group get stronger. It will build, I think, over time to do other things. So we took a lead and everybody jumped in, and now there's a real cohesion about moving forward.
That's amazing. Thank you.
I think we didn't know if anybody would come when we invited them for lunch. We asked a lot of people. We had no idea that 38 people would show up. That just shows that you've got to ask, because people are out there. People care about this stuff.
Yeah, great.
Good word. Thank you. Carol, will you share?
Hi, everybody. I'm from Sacramento, California, and I'm part of a Care for Creation ministry at St. Anthony's, and I've been doing this work for about 4 to 5 years. So we actually won the role model for the country for churches because we've done so much. But we've done quite a few different activities. This year we did an advocacy summit where we brought our youth from Southern California all the way to into Sacramento, and included all the Catholic churches, the youth, to come and advocate at the Capitol for environmental bills. So we did that initially and had a wonderful turnout with the kids staying at local parishes overnight so they could be there on Monday to advocate, and had to do personal testimony. As many of you know, in Los Angeles, a lot of our youth had lost their homes. So it was really meaningful. But from that movement, we decided we wanted, there's the one and only National Shrine of St. Francis in San Francisco. So we decided to, just three or four of us decided to create a pilgrimage walk. And so we walked through the streets of San Francisco, and we had one of our youth made the most beautiful poster boards that are just vibrant, with these vibrant colors. You have to see them. But we walked through the streets all the way. It was a little long, 3.8 miles. We realized it was a little long for the group of people, but we also had people awaiting us, and we had a special mass to honor Pope Francis. It was planned prior that he was supposed to be alive, and it was honor of his 10th anniversary. But as it turned out, we had a large turnout because so many people wanted to honor him for all that he had done. And we wanted to keep that legacy alive. And so one of the cool things that we did as part of our mass is that the National Shrine has limited resources right now in San Francisco. So we had a collection, but we also had everyone write on a leaf something they wanted to do, a conversion that they wanted to make. And we put all these on a little string, and we brought this massive manzanita branch with all these conversions that they were going to do, and we brought that forth to the altar as part of our presentation of the gifts. And then we had a get together afterwards where we just gathered and made friends and all of that. But anyway, in that light of that spirit, we decided, obviously, we wanted to do something during the season of creation, and we wanted to choose some different locations that normally wouldn't think about doing this. So I was just speaking with someone yesterday. We're doing in Chico, California. It's a very rural area, very conservative area, but it's very beautiful. I actually went to school there, had some friends up there, and I've been convincing them to create this up there to go. And unfortunately, there was major fires up there, so there's a lot of devastation in that area. So we're planning that also in the season of creation, one in Sacramento. And then our newest plan that I recently was at a national park in California. I don't know if you've been in Kings Canyon, Sequoia. It's those massive, large trees. And there was a lot of devastation also. In the 1800s, they just took down groves of these. And so in that, I saw the beauty, but also the devastation. And I decided that what we need to do is also have a virtual pilgrimage for people who aren't able to walk, so that anybody from anywhere could be a part of that. So we'll see if it comes to fruition. But anyway, so that's some of the things that we're working on.
amazing creativity and energy. Great examples. I'm struck by how important it is to get artists involved. You mentioned the beautiful poster boards and how important it is to get young people involved, and how important it is to eat together, to find ways to share table fellowship together. So thank you for that. Who else has suggestions or ideas or questions or reports on something cool that you did?
Kathleen has her hand up.
Oh, good. Thank you, Kathleen.
Sure. So I just have a question. I go to a very small church. I mean, our core is maybe 14 people, and we're all old. And so does anyone here have ideas for a congregation such as ours, very old, in a very conservative part of California? Believe it or not, there are those places. And something we could do that for Sunday that wouldn't take a lot of physical effort, not a lot of money, we're flat broke, but something we could do to kind of, turn the rest of the community on to this kind of thing.
Kathleen, what part of California are you from?
So I go to church up in Smith River, Del Norte County.
Oh, okay.
Coastal.
There's a new California chapter of Laudato Si. You definitely need to join because we are planning so many all over California. So if you put your email in, I can send you information and you can be a part of it because we're creating these pilgrimage walks all over California to, help conversion
Sure.
communities.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, glom onto other faith traditions.
Yeah, totally.
Rua, what would you like to add? Go ahead.
Yes, well, what first came to my mind was a big ad in the local newspaper of what your beliefs are and how important this day is as maybe a beginning, a new beginning. Simple, inexpensive, and doesn't require walking.
Or if you don't want to pay for an ad, however cheap, you could do a letter to the editor.
Yeah.
Jane, do you want to?
Yeah, Kathleen, I had a simple thought, and that is to invite a guest speaker, and that could be someone from a solar company, and invite the community. So that would draw you all in, but it would also have the advantage of providing education and promoting solar power on Sunday.
Good idea.
Throw a party, in other words.
Jessica had her hand up at the bottom.
Thank you. And I was actually going to follow Jane's suggestion, having worked with a congregation, with the work I do with the Mass Conference, I've been paired sometimes with elder congregations, small, not very much energy, trying to do something. And one of them is inviting a guest speaker. And the other is also in terms of offering, besides putting out a notice or writing a letter to the editor, is to invite their guests and so forth to talk about having a special service for basically season of creation, so that you identify that even as elders, that you have a special calling and vocation to model in your community how important it is. And so oftentimes just taking that position can be really life affirming for a church.
Cool.
Thank you. I see Catherine and Nina. Catherine.
This might synthesize some of the ideas that have been advanced. I keep thinking, although I haven't implemented it yet, about trying to have a cross-generational little interview project with young people who are far more adept doing social media, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or what have you, doing short little snippets of interviews, a minute at the most, 2 minutes, little testimonials with some of the elders who are involved in this movement, talk about what matters, why, what we're hoping for. And to get that online and in social media and circulated that way. The collaboration with young people to be the interviewees, I think, could be just little there, but maybe it would lead to longer form conversations as well.
Great.
Idea. Nina, please.
This might also dovetail with that, and I'm just riffing off of the rocking chair rebellion that, you know, Third Act does. I think if you could have young people, depending on where your church is, but if it's on a good location, have young people put rocking chairs out on the sidewalk, and the 14 of you sit in the rocking chairs on Sunday, and you rock, and I was thinking, and you would have a sign, right? There'd be signage there that would tell people why you're rocking. But I love what whoever it was just said what they said, because maybe while you're there rocking, that's when the young people could be there with you and simply on their phones interview you, each of you, you know, with your stories about why this is
That's
important
great.
to you. And
Wow.
and so you intergenerational, you're rocking people, believe me, you got 14 rocking chairs there with 14 people sitting on them. People are they're gonna notice, they're gonna wonder what's going on. So that's sort of a fun idea, which also could be meaningful. And then they could put their recordings on the web somehow.
Yeah, it's funny. Our church is directly across the street from the elementary school. So, you know.
Great.
Fantastic. I see Hannah, Ron, and Ace. Hannah, go ahead.
Yeah, this kind of builds off of, you know, what we've been talking about some tonight and what Ron was talking about in terms of the cohort model. But I think not just for Sunday, but collaborating with other local congregations whose values align with yours, I think is important for like building any kind of sustainable ministry in congregations like yours. Like we work with congregations just like what you described a lot at Gipple. And one of the things that has been really successful, about 2 years ago, we launched a regional interfaith green team on the coast. Because we had a number of congregations that were like, we only have 1 or 2 people in our green team. We feel like we can't do much of anything. We're getting discouraged. And so helped to organize like this cohort model. And this team has been thriving. It's, you know, maybe 10 different congregations. They have a core group of like 30 people that are doing things together. And they just brought a whole busload of people up to Atlanta this week to testify to the Public Service Commission. So I think that model really works. And that's definitely like the advice that I would give, not just for like this particular day, but just kind of looking forward to what a creation care ministry could look like, is partnering with other congregations that are around you.
Thank you, Hannah. Yeah. Ron, go ahead.
I was just thinking about how in September, I'll often go to one University of Michigan football game per year, and how I will see people gathering around outside tailgating. So they'll have a large television and they'll be watching. Oh dear. I'm sorry. My phone went off. I'll see them watching. They're watching the football game. The football game is in the stadium, just a quarter of a mile away, but they're gathered around watching a television. But they're outdoors and they're grilling and they're enjoying each other's company. And I just wonder if you could do that. There are all sorts of interesting TED Talks or Catherine Hayhoe's YouTube channel or something like that. You could get a number of folks outside and do a where folks are out there actually sort of watching something and then maybe having conversation. I'm just sort of riffing on some of the same idea, but I'm thinking about September and tailgating season.
Tailgate model. I love it. You can grill tofu dogs if you don't want to grill meat.
And it is prior to the rainy season out here, so that helps too.
I love it. Ace, go ahead.
I mean, isn't this incredible, the kind of ideas that are flowing out of all of you tonight? I assume for all of you like me, it gives you some more energy and some motivation to get out there. Now, everyone just responded to Kathleen. So let me say to Kathleen, my initial thought was music, because Kathleen is our music woman, par excellence. Plus, she puts all those things in the chat for everybody, all the links. It's amazing how she does that so quick. So I'm just calling her out for all her work for Third Act Faith. But besides that, everything that people suggested to Kathleen, you can all do in your communities. You don't just have to have Kathleen do it in Washington. And I think it's really important. I know this is the message that I would think Bill wants to get out there. Every one of us has to take some of these ideas and do something with it in our communities, whether or not there's somebody else doing it and you can join in, or you take the lead. And remember, the big focus here also is solar. Let's not lose the idea that we want clean energy, and that's where, we're putting all our time and energy and love into this idea of getting us off of fossil fuels. Just channeling Bill McKibben for a minute. The other thing I just wanted to add is, I don't remember what the other thing is because I just lost my train of thought. So yay for what we're doing tonight, and let me send it back to Deborah.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Ace. Yeah, I think what I'm hearing, the big themes I'm hearing tonight are partner up if you can. And Sunday is a day of building. We want to build a cultural change that's positive about climate solutions, in particular solar energy, but other forms of renewable energy too. There's lots of reasons for that. There's lots of resources at the Third Act website. For faith communities, partner up with each other, partner up with other people doing other things for Sunday, and let this be a time when we build these partnerships going forward. So this is a time to get out of our own lanes and try something new, but do it with others if you possibly can, and make those connections. Those connections are strength, and that strength is going to help us build this clean energy transition and build a more just and sustainable future. So I really want to thank our guests. Thank you so much, Hannah, for being with us. Thank you for the work that you do with Georgia Interfaith Power and Light. Thank you, Nina, for your leadership and wisdom. I'm excited to read your book. Thank you, Ron, for stepping into the last second. Really appreciate that. And thanks to all of you for being here tonight. I'm going to turn it back over to Rua, who's going to do final thank yous and announcements.
Well, actually, Deborah just did all the thank yous I was about to do.
Oh.
So I just grow right, but I am so grateful to be here in this community. It is uplifting, and I love the way that everybody just kind of rose to Kathleen's question. And so now she's walking away with a whole notebook full of ideas to bring back. It's great. This is it takes a village, So thank you for being here. So anybody can go to the Third Act Faith part of the website of Third Act and find upcoming events. I'm just going to mention a few that are coming up soon. One is on July 8th is the Sacred Listening Circle, and it's a lightly facilitated conversation for these stressful times, a time to come together in a spiritual way. And then on July 10th is the Coffee Klatch. This is something new that we're doing. It's not facilitated. It's just a chance to get your cup of coffee, get to know other Third Act Faith people, and hear what's on people's hearts. So it's an experiment, and we hope that that you'll take a chance. And then the general meeting in July is July 22nd. It's titled Sustainable Homes, Solar and Community Solar. And it's about learning how people of faith can build on the transition to renewable energy for Sunday. And I've been asked to share one more thing. which I will do. If you haven't already seen it, Third Act Faith has begun to develop a set of resources for faith communities who want to bring their worship and other activities. Martin is putting that link into the chat right now. Is Martin still here? I think
No, but I just did it. I just did it.
Just did it. Okay. Jane Ellen is just putting that link in the I'm just following a script here.
Yes.
Over the coming weeks, we'll be sending out some very simple requests for your suggestions for resources to include here. Well, we just heard tons of resources that belong there with that, right? The first one is you can do right now if you know of a poem or short reading that celebrates the power or beauty of the sun, please email it to faith@thirdact.org. So that's faith@thirdact.org. And we'll also include this request in the email follow-up to this meeting. And this meeting has been recorded. So if you didn't get all the information written out that you heard, you can come back and find it. So thank you so much, everybody. My heart has grown in this hour and a half we've been together. So I think I turn it back over to Kathleen for some ending music.
What will our children say if we do nothing but turn away? For them and us, the future calls. Save our planet, both one and all. Youth of the world, understand. We hold their future in our hands. Now is the time, now is the hour. For together we all have the power. So stand up, take control. It's our world, only one we know. Stand together, hand in hand. We can do this. Oh, yes, we can. You are a sunshine. Sunshine. We can see. Let's go away. Be you. Yes, tomorrow be a bright day. Tomorrow will be a bright day.
Night, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Great session. Thank you so much.